Hello. So, as I noticed so much building resentment and bitterness to the point that I would comment to my husband, I feel like it's like making me like sick, like physically ill. I have to do something about this. I can't put it all on them. This is part of like my growth as a person. Like I just need to figure out ways that that I won't be so resentful and bitter. And so one of the first things that I decided to try was I figured that my resentment and bitterness was due to the fact that so many events were placed on me. So many of the summer vacations were, this is what we're going to do. And so I thought if I could take some power back and start to say no to certain events, or okay, that's cool if you go on that vacation, but I'll only be there for XYZ amount of days, and I maybe won't stay at the same place as you, I'll stay nearby. So I thought if I could have that type of power, I'd start to feel better. And so the first time that I really kind of was able to put this to use in my recollection, maybe happened before then, but anyway, was summer 2017. So oldest sister-in-law did the usual, she was the usual like planner, this is where we're going. And so she said, we're going to the Wisconsin Dells. It's a place where you do hotels, water parks. I don't know. It's in Wisconsin. And these are the dates. We'll be staying at these hotels. And, you guys are coming. Of course, middle sister-in-law is never in these conversations because middle sister-in-law doesn't have any of these expectations. So I told my husband that I wasn't going to go, but he was still completely enmeshed. And who knows at this point? Is he a covert narc? Is he narcissistically defended? That's not the point here. But he was unable. He had to be in the apron strings and go anyway. But I just wasn't doing it. I just was not going to do it. The other thing about the summer is oldest sister-in-law doesn't have a job. And my husband being a school teacher, he doesn't have a job in the summer anyway. Bear with me, you know what I mean. And so that was kind of my other like annoyance with just. And then my in-law, father-in-law, mother-in-law are retired. So it always felt weird to me, like, why are we letting the people without the jobs make all of these vacations? Like my work ebbs and flows based on like what week it is. And so not only did I feel like getting my power back by like saying, that's cool that you're going, but that particular week, it's just not going to work for me this time around. But the other reason was I legit did have something going on at work at that point. Was it something I literally could not have asked my boss to let me out of? I probably could have gotten out of it. But again, I didn't want to. I wanted to start being able to have control over what I did with my time. It felt like my PTO was being spent by other people all of the time. Saying no did not go well. Matt had some side texts, some side conversations, a lot of pressure to get me to do it. I don't remember a whole bunch else of this particular Dells trip. I do remember more of some other upcoming things, but I just remember he did get a lot of pressure. And I remember that I got continuing on really briefly from that last one that I just did. The other thing is that I had a 1.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old at that time in summer of 2017. And my 1.5-year-old was a very, very difficult sleeper, was not sleeping well at all. And so there was slightly another reason of just, I won't relax on a vacation at this stage. I have a 1.5 and a 2.5-year-old, and we're going to a water park where I can sit in the wading pool with them. And none of you are going to help me with them anyway, let's be honest. So my enmeshed husband took my oldest daughter, my 2.5-year-old, to the vacation, and my 1.5-year-old daughter and I stayed home for the week. During the week, I got a lot of texts from my mother-in-law and my oldest sister-in-law about what a shame it was, and you're really missing out here. The next occurrence was the first time that my mother-in-law confronted me to my face about a decision that I had made. It's now spring of 2018, and they still do the snowbird thing. So they have a West Palm Beach home and they have their Minnesota home. Suddenly, with no warning, it's just extremely spontaneous. Suddenly, everyone needs to meet in spring break down in West Palm Beach at their home. A couple issues with this. First of all, it's West Palm Beach. I went to pharmacy school there and I did my undergrad there. So I lived for 8 years in West Palm Beach. I happen to hate spring break in West Palm Beach. I know that might sound spoiled, but when you've lived in a spring break town for 8 years, the last thing you want to do is fly down there for spring break. Second thing is that my in-laws have a 2-bedroom condo in Florida. They don't anymore. Mother-in-law is insisting that everyone go to this trip. Middle sister-in-law actually can lower herself to go to this trip because it's Florida and because the in-laws say that they'll pay for everything. I've been conditioned, and I know enough at this point that if I go down to a 2-bedroom location, I will be on the floor. It's 2 bedrooms, so my parent-in-laws will get one, my oldest sister-in-law will get the other, the middle sis will get the pull-out couch. We will literally be on the floor, and if we try to say that we're going to stay at a hotel, I wasn't strong enough yet, we will absolutely be blasted for it. So I'm just, and this once again is, you just randomly want me to take PTO again. You want me to use my PTO on your account, on your demand. And this actually was a really busy audit week at work. So I said no. And I had to keep saying no because I got so much flack for it. At one point, my mother-in-law on a weeknight said she wanted to come down and have supper with us. I obviously should have known what was about to happen. I was clearing the dishes and I turn around and she's right behind me and she says, "So Bethy, what's the deal with spring break? Why aren't you coming down? Why can't you come down? It's really, really important to me. It's really, really important to all of us." I stood my ground and I said, "You're getting really pushy about this and guilting me a lot. I just don't want to go." I still sense some toxicity in that part of my kitchen. That was the first of, as many of you, if you've been following, know, of about 5 confrontations at my house. And one of the reasons that I really look forward to moving, I can see the spot from right here where I'm sitting, where she confronted me. And when I say confrontation, no one hit, no one yelled, but that was the first time that my mother-in-law tried to stare me down, tried to corner me, and very much tried to intimidate me, scare me into submission. I remember inwardly, I was dying. This was one of the first times that not only had I stood up to one of the parents, whether my parents or my in-laws, and said, no, I wasn't going to do something. So not only was I already feeling like all of the internal angst, all of the mixed emotions of that, all of the guilt, not only from them, but the guilt inside me from, again, being raised as a people pleaser. So not only have I like, oh my gosh, I've actually done it. I've stood up for them. But then to have her like stare me down and try to intimidate me, again, to call it a confrontation to some might be like, girl, that's not a confrontation. But to me, that was. So anyway, I was telling her, you're really, I almost couldn't even believe the words coming from my mouth and just how calm I sounded by saying, you're really giving me a lot of grief over this. You're really being pushy. I've already stated the facts that I kind of used the excuse, which it wasn't an excuse, but again, I probably could have gotten out of the audit at work. I would have felt like I was leaving my team and my boss hanging because my part, my portion, my contribution to the audit would have to be somehow filled by someone who, wasn't as learned in that particular aspect as me. But, I said, I have an audit, and this sure came on, I remember telling my mother-in-law, this came on really fast. This was extremely spontaneous. We've only been talking, you first mentioned this 2 weeks ago and suddenly there's flights and, I'm suddenly supposed to just change my entire life, my work just for something that you suddenly thought of. I do not remember her response. I don't think she escalated. I think she pulled the extremely hurt puppy dog and went to talk to my husband. I don't remember anything after this. But then what happened was, again, same story as the one about the Dells that I just told. My enmeshed husband, who still completely would crumple under the toxic women in his life, did fly down with my eldest daughter. They were, in fact, sleeping on the floor while they were there. And I stayed home with my youngest daughter. I was going to finish there, but I have one more that will fit well with kind of what I was doing. So that was the spring of 2018. And what I'm referring to is look back, I think I have 2 or 3 before this one. So then that summer of 2018, group chat was always huge with my in-laws. You needed to respond right away. You got a whole bunch of direct questions that you needed to answer. And as I've talked about in past content, there were times where my mother-in-law would pretty often get over 40, near 50 texts herself a day, and it even did get up to 60 at times just from her. But anyway, I've talked about that in past content, so the one I'm going to talk about today is that my oldest sister-in-law lives in Illinois, near a big city, and she would talk about how we should come visit her, that, oh, we've come your direction so often, Newsflash, you've come our direction so often because your parents live here. Mother and father-in-law live here. I never say to my siblings, I come down to Iowa all the time. You should come here. The reason I return to Iowa is my parents are there. They all live there. I don't guilt anyone about coming to see me. Anyway, back to the so his oldest sister-in-law kept, saying to us, you really need to come here this summer. We would really like you to come here this summer to our big Illinois city on a summer vacation. And a couple things about this, again, with the whole, why are you writing what I do with my PTO? Second thing is that they live in a setting where not only would we not be able to stay in their house, but we would not be able to stay in a hotel either for several miles. And if we were able to get a hotel, it would be very expensive. And I plain just didn't want to visit the city that my sister-in-law lives in. I have no desire not only to spend my time there, but for that to be a destination. And my husband said he felt the same. So she said it on the group chat, and I probably could have left it to my husband to respond, but I just responded back, no, we don't feel like coming to Chicago, whatever. I can stop pretending like I don't want to say it. We're not coming to Chicago this summer. That's not part of our plans. She immediately side texts Matt how hurtful that is, that first of all, that she doesn't want to hear from Bethany on these things. And it's like, well, why did you ask the group chat then? Why didn't you just text him? If you didn't want to hear from Bethany on these things, you didn't want to hear from me because I said no. It's that simple. And how hurt she was that we didn't want to come see her. Again, she talked about how, they come this way and they just wanted us to return the favor. It's like, you're not coming to see me, middle sister-in-law. You go up an hour north to Minneapolis to see father-in-law and mother-in-law. Like, yes, we then are enmeshed and come up to see you when you're actually there, but we don't come to see you. So we actually did turn her down on that one and not do it, but there were. So it's still 2018 in the story. In the summer of 2018, I opted to have a minor procedure to correct some bothersome things that had occurred after the traumatic delivery of my first child. I did a post on it. And due to that minor procedure that I had in the summer of 2018, I was directed to not be in any bodies of water above my belly button for several months until things down there had completely healed. And so I couldn't go into a pool or a lake during the summer, which kind of blows to have that happen in Minneapolis. Because in Minnesota, the summer is the only time of year that you can even really be outside and comfortable. So anyway. So summer 2018 is when oldest sister-in-law, like my last post, was really giving us a lot of grief about, you need to return the favor. You need to come here to Chicago and see us. And we were like, no, we're not interested. And so they kind of were like, well, fine, we'll come that direction. We will go to Hayward, Wisconsin, to a cabin, and mom and dad, my parent-in-laws are gonna come see us, and we would like you to be there too. Again, I can't be in a lake. And not only can I not be in a lake, I don't want to be in a lake. Again, I'm trying to get to the point where I get to choose what I do with my PTO. This was the same lake and lake cabin I'd been to 2 years previous when my mother-in-law walked down to the water holding my 18-month-old's hand and then went to do something else, leaving my 18-month-old with no life jacket thigh deep in the water. I don't want to go back there, really. We got a whole lot of grief about it. Did middle sister-in-law, who doesn't come home for any of these vacations, did she get grief about it? She didn't get any grief about it because, she lives so far away. Why would we expect her to do these things? But no, Matt and I got a whole lot of grief about it. We got so much grief that we somewhat caved. We said, fine, we're not going to come to the Hayward thing, but when you come back into Minneapolis to stay at the parent-in-laws like you always do, Bethany will I took 3 days off work so that we could, go hiking and et cetera, whatever, just kind of in the area. One of the days, I can't remember which one, my sister-in-law literally I won't use confront here, but in the driveway, said what was the big deal with why couldn't you come to Hayward? Why couldn't you come on the vacation to the lake home? So I turned and I looked at her and I said, because I had to have surgery down there because of my traumatic birth of my first child that left me with a lot of complications. I had surgery and I'm not supposed to be in standing water for 3 months. And she was so sweet about it. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear. Thanks for telling me. It's like, well, I didn't want to tell you until you pressured me so much that I had to. I didn't say that part. It's a slow process. It's a slow process saying no and standing up for yourself and learning what you do have to give reasons for and what you don't. And that was 2018. It's 2022. I'm still working on it, improving, working. This comment from this commenter and other comments like it are a prime example of someone enabling the continued abuse of a victim, overlooking the actual abuse that's occurring, and instead blaming the victim for their reaction to it. The original video that this comment is on is where I describe a time that my narcissistically abusive mother-in-law cornered and confronted me in my own kitchen because she didn't like the firm and valid reasons I'd given for why I wasn't attending a forced family event. In the video, I describe how terrified I was, how much that part of my house has been clouded by the fact that my mother-in-law could openly confront me and have no qualms about doing so. Nowhere does this commenter address the fact that I was abused. Rather, my animated reaction in the video, as I describe it, is simply enough for the commenter to label me as classic BPD. In the words of the great Elise Myers here on TikTok, I respond, I do not receive this. It's important for me to be a voice to victims of abuse who've been labeled as having a personality disorder or other mental illness as the sole reason of our suffering, like it's simply a faulty interpretation of events and not actual traumatic abuse. You, Dawn, from Nova Scotia, are at best an enabler and at worst likely an abuser. In the book, The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk's premise is that some people are indeed born with personality disorders and bipolar, etc. But many, many more are traumatized into them. The ways that we have developed to live with past trauma are symptoms of other diagnoses. In the case of BPD, there's fear of abandonment, emotional dysregulation, zero distress tolerance. And it's not the disorder themselves. BPD and complex PTSD are easily confused due to the overlap in symptoms. Dr. van der Kolk believes that the limitations of the DSM-5, this is a manual with a classification of mental health diagnoses, this manual is letting down victims of abuse, whether childhood, adolescent, and/or adult abuse. For example, since complex PTSD is not recognized by the DSM, since trauma is not recognized as a major player in the signs of borderline personality disorder, people with repressed or not repressed trauma get labeled as, in this example, having borderline personality disorder. I'm going to read something from Dr. Betsy Usher. I'm definitely going to run out of time, but I'll do my best and I'll continue later. This doctor also believes in her research and experience, similar to van der Kolk, that 80% of those diagnosed with borderline personality disorder are actually suffering from complex PTSD, from emotional neglect and/or narcissistic abuse with abandonment issues. Although they meet criteria for BPD, they are not the stigma